lang ng iyong mga mata. Nag-iisip kung paano ba kikita. Ipon mong pera, nasasait na ba? Kaliwag kanan na rin bang iyong problema? Let's talk pag-usapan natin ito. Don't walk, may sasabihin ako sa'yo. Sasalveses, iyo ang una. Sasalveses, solve ang problema. Lahat walang imposible. Sasalveses. Ang problema nyo ay pagnegosyo, halika dito. Makinig sa aking payo, ang mamitiin sa bayan ng panalangin. At huwag mahihiyan na lumapit sa akin. Halika na dito sa Salveses. Salveses, iyo ang una. Salveses, solve ang problema. Salveses, let's talk, don't walk. Let's talk, Salveses, let's talk, don't walk. Let's talk, Salveses.
Hello! Good evening, friends! Aba, paus-paus ang kita nyo. Na-miss nyo ba ako? I don't know how you could since most of you read my daily posts anyway. Pero here we are, ready and excited to have that kind of crazy fun we get here at Salveses, even as we fire up those neurons in your head. Diba? Today, we're lucky to have the Papa Piolo Pascual of Finance. Meron tayong guest today. I'm sure he's laughing in the background. I can see him laughing. Anthony De Guzman is the co-founder of Axel Institute, bringing to the Philippines the kind of education he and his colleagues have experienced in places like Wharton at the University of Pennsylvania, Harvard University, Stanford University, and the like. And oh my God, at a tiny fraction of the cost. In his past life, he used to be in the field of private equity, working at a multi-billion, multi-strategy fund called Abri Partners. Mamaya tatanong ko sa kanya kung tama yung pronunciation ko. And an investment banker for Morgan Stanley in the US and Europe. So, juicy tidbit, he loves the performing arts. And I hear from little birdies that he's sometimes the force behind the curtain, so to speak. But I bet he can sing. Come on up, Anthony. So happy to have you here today.
Hello.
So,
Hi,
diba,
good
Papa
evening. Hi,
Piolo
Salve.
of
Thank you
Finance.
for having me. But grabe naman. Grabe naman yung pag-overpromise sa audience mo na Papa
Walang
Piolo.
overpromise dito. Hindi ganyan
Ano,
ang
and the
Salveses.
force
So, can
and
you
the force
sing?
behind the curtain ako. Ibig sabihin ako yung naglilinis sa backstage.
Tagawalis. Tagawalis
Oo.
sa mga confetti pag nalaglag na. So,
Tama,
Anthony,
tama.
can you sing ba? Do you sing?
I try to but not very well. So wala, huwag tayong magsasample lang. Hindi ako handa, hindi ako handa.
Okay, wala mga friends. Bawal daw. Okay, magsha-shout out lang ako, Anthony, ha. Si Glenn,
Sure,
nandito
sure.
si Glenn, si Dayang, si Raniel Tabasian. Of course, Helen Salazar, may mga questions na sila for you. Hindi pa tayo
Oh,
nagsa-start,
wow.
nagtatanong na sila. Chinky Del Alcazar is watching from Bicol, just so you know. Dante Corteza said, hello, Papa A. Kilala mo ba to? Tawag na nila sa'yo, Papa A.
No.
Jim Caliedo is a top fan of Salveses. Good evening daw. Ronald Resha is watching from Jeddah. And Dante Corteza is in Iloilo. And SM says hi. All right. So, diretso na tayo. But before I ask you to sing, ay, joke lang. Hindi pala. Hindi pala kakanta. Okay, before we go to our first question, because we have the unenviable task, ladies and gentlemen, of talking about how to invest in the stock market in 20 minutes. So, mahirap to, di ba? Dahil gano'n mo katagal to pinag-aralan, di ba? Matagal.
Nako, taon.
Ayun,
We can be here
taon.
all night for
Ayun,
hours kung
yun na
kung
nga,
may
yun na
oras
nga. But
kayo.
tama. Pero before we go to our first question, we pause a bit to mention our sponsors lang, ha? Shujiki the Hair Salon Manila and Linel Hair. I look at hair care, Anthony, like value investor. The cost is not the same as the value. Over time, sana
I like
magsabay.
it.
O, di ba? May ganon. Pero, di ba, so you get the care that you will heal the damage to your hair and give you most returns over time. Ganon. And then friends of the show also include Astoria Hotels and Resorts, our place of heaven here in the Metro, Palawan, Boracay, and Bohol. And back to the show. Mabilisan lang talaga kasi ma-maximize natin yung oras nitong napakagaling natin na guest. So for everybody here, we want to talk about the super basic muna. Kasi a lot of the Salveses top fans, members of Money University by Salveses, and those who follow us on different platforms here in the internet, they're already stock market investors. There are some want to begin but don't know how to start. So for somebody like you, let's start with the most basic of all. Pag pumipili ka ng stock for the first time, you're getting your feet wet, ano yung filter na ginagamit mo? What are the three most important things that you look at? And maybe you can give examples.
Sure. So, I think kahit nagsisimula ka pa lang, it's really important to start right. So, start with the fundamentals para hindi yung right off the bat biglang we're just listening to the hype or kung ano yung nasa news, ganyan. So, I'm really glad to talk about this tonight with you, Salve, and your listeners and your followers. So, for me kasi, I'm a long-term investor. So, talagang 5 to 10 years na time horizon. And it's important to think about that, syempre, kung ano ba yung good fit sa ating financial and wealth goals. But generally, I would suggest na for people to look at the stock market and investing as a long game, na hindi yung pangmadalian na bigyan na tayong yayaman after 3 months, 6 months, 1 year, etc. Right? Kasi talagang masyado siyang volatile in order for us to naasahan yung ganun yung mangyayari, diba? So talagang it's a long game. So for me, what I like to look at are three things. So una is the industry. So maganda ba yung industry? Is it profitable? Is it attractive? Is it growing? Is it big? And will it be relevant in the future? Tatagal ba siya? Diba? Kasi kung sabihin natin, it's a profitable industry now, pero in a few years' time, mawawala naman talaga siya kasi madi-disrupt siya ng technology or something else that comes along. Baka hindi pa rin pasok sa investment strategy natin, lalo na kung long-term yung horizon natin. So that's number one. Number two would be the place of that or the quality of that company within the industry. Parang where are they? Are they best in class? Are they the fastest growing company within that attractive industry? na napili natin. So I like investing in best-in-class companies. So the industry leaders, the ones that are the fastest growing, even if they may not be the leaders right now. Talagang quality companies that do their job well and serve their customers well. So I look for that. I look for leadership in the industry. And then third, of course, something that hopefully we're all familiar with is the price. So presyo, valuation, diba? And the way that we think of price, of course, is not just price na, is this 100 peso stock or $100 stock if you're investing in the US. It's always relative to something. So it's relative to, in most cases, the earnings that a company will generate, right? So I guess the best example that I can think of is something like, sabihin natin real estate, di ba? Meron kang isang property na nag-generate ng, sabihin natin, rental income of 100,000 pesos per year. Merong isang property A, na pwede mong bilhin na 1 million pesos. So 1 million pesos, yung presyo ng something that will give you 100,000 of income versus may isa pa na 2 million pesos. Pero 100,000 pesos din yung income na generate. So if you divide the price,
ba, alin ang gusto nyo doon? Company A,
yes,
company
tama.
B. O, ito na si Prof. Nagtuturo na. Di ba? O, 1 million versus 2 million, pero same income. That's the example, no?
Correct.
Tama.
May mga sagot ba tayo?
May mga sagot na ba, guys? Uy! Yung economist si Ronilo Balbiran nandito, sir. Kumusta naman? O, di ba? May nakikinig
Good evening,
sa'yo na
sir.
ekonomista.
Wow naman.
Right.
I'm
guys,
honored.
sagot. Ano yun? Company A, company B gusto nyo? Anyway, explain na natin. So, the
Sige.
price
So,
to
syempre,
earnings.
so yung gusto natin doon is everything else being equal, na 100,000 pesos yung generate na income. Gusto natin yung mas mura, di ba? So, divide natin 1 million divided by 100,000. O, tama, ang daming matamang sagot, di ba? So, 10 times yung sabihin natin, yung parang price to earnings ratio in that case. And then yung isa, 20 times kasi 2, di ba, 2 million. Ganun din when we look at companies. We look at ano ba yung presyo nila in the stock market, pero it's always relative to something na, and in this case, the most commonly used metric is yung bottom line na tinatawag yung net income. And yan din yung earnings per share na tinatawag, diba? So I definitely look at that. Kasi sabihin natin dun sa filter 1 and filter 2 natin, magandang industriya tapos magandang kumpanya within the industry. Kapag mahal naman yung presyo, mahirap din, di ba? Kasi baka masyadong mataas yung expectations, tapos hindi nila ma-meet. Baka, may mga mangyari na hindi naman natin ma-foresee, tapos bumaba yung presyo, di ba? So, we want to look for reasonably priced companies by many metrics, di ba?
Sir, magsasalita lang po. Estudyante,
Sige,
parang
please,
nasa
please.
klase ba tayo ngayon? Pero I just want to flex this, Anthony, kasi I feel like ang dami-daming mga investors, lalo na sa Pilipinas, no, when they hear someone on TV say, okay, this stock is great, ganon, bibili sila at whatever price. Is that a big mistake? Para kasi based on what you're saying, maganda nga yung kumpanya, pero nabili mo pala at the top. Yung parang super expensive siya, tapos
Yes.
pababa na pala yun. So, hindi rin maganda.
Correct. Tama. This can potentially be a big mistake. So, the way to check is always relative to other similar companies to it. Ano ba yung PE ratio ng ibang companies, right? And of course, I also want to say na PE ratio is just one of the metrics that you look at. There are also other multiples, pero pinaka-common yung price to earnings. Now, hindi naman natin pipiliin lagi na yung 1 million peso property or company, yung bibilin lagi, di ba? Kasi hindi naman static yung income na every year talagang 100,000 pesos lang. Kapag yung 2 million peso property pala, from 100,000, biglang magiging 300,000 na or 500,000 yung income niya that you will generate from it in a few years' time. then there's a reason na 20 times yung bayad mo in terms of the price to earnings ratio. So that's something that dapat consider din natin kapag tinitingnan natin yung mga kumpanya. So for me, I do both. Parang there are certain situations where pinapaniwalaan ko yung growth potential ng company. So magbabayad ako ng mas mataas na PE ratio. Pero meron din times na parang pareho lang naman yung dalawang kumpanya or tatlo or apat na kumpanya. Pipiliin ko na yung pinakamaganda yung value. So typically, yun yung aking 3 filters.
Nice. Meron lang very interesting comment dito si Goody Moody. The market is weird. Every time one guy sells, another one buys, and they both think they're smart. I think I read this also somewhere before.
That's totally true. Yes. So, it's interesting, right? Somebody has a contrarian view and somebody has the traditional view, I guess, and that's what makes it exciting in a sense. Diba kasi may bumibili, may nagbebenta, and we see kung sino yung tama at the end of it. So, I guess I have some examples, Salve, if that's something that we want to get into. Sige, so using these 3 filters, gagamitin kong examples US companies ha. And napag-usapan namin to ni Salve before. Kasi minsan, yung mga Philippine companies and Philippine stocks, they don't trade as strictly on fundamentals. Kasi less developed yung market natin, there are fewer investors, there's less information usually. So in this case, gamitin muna natin, if you can indulge me, gamitin natin US companies. Kasi US companies, usually the market prices really reflect more accurately yung growth potential ng company, kung profitable ba talaga siya, at saka mabilis na nag-a-adjust to the information flow kasi sobrang daming tao na tinitingnan yon, di ba? People in the, journalists, investors na retail, but also institutional investors. So, yun yung gamitin natin. So
parang tuwang-tuwa yan si Coach Aris is listening. Also, he's a hardinero in Italy, investing in the US stock market.
Wow.
Kaya feeling ko, nakadikit na yung tenga niya sa screen.
Wow,
okay,
I love
go
it.
ahead.
Yes, and diba these days, madali na mag-invest from anywhere in the world in the US stock market. And papag-usapan natin yan if you were from the Philippines and you want to invest in the stock market. Much easier now so than it used to be. So it's really, it can be a relevant example. So something that I like, and this might be controversial, and by the way, this is not investment advice. This is just, providing information, education. So hopefully you can make your own decisions about your investments. But I will share...
at your own risk, guys. Huwag nyo kami ibiblame pag nawalan kayo ng pera.
Correct. Okay. Do your own research, right? Pero hopefully, para buhay yung examples natin, we'll go specific. So one industry that I like is the semiconductor chip industry in the US. So ito yung mga graphics processing unit that power our devices, mga computers, mobile devices, data centers that support yung mga cloud computing, ganyan. Even AI now, diba? Ang daming news sa AI. I like that because it makes the chips that power a lot of the technology of today and the future. And I think na hindi mawawala yung industry na yan because we're only going to be much more reliant on technology and things like AI in the future, diba? And so for me, check yung industry na it's a good industry. Within that industry, syempre marami kang choices. One stock that I like, again, this is not investment advice, this is just an example. Nvidia is one such company. So kapag gamer ka, baka familiar ka sa Nvidia kasi they used to just make graphics processing unit for mga video gaming laptops and devices. Yan dun sila malakas. But since then, many years before when they were focusing on that, they've really managed to grow a lot and branch out and really power a lot of the world's computers, not just on the gaming side. Actually, they also power yung mga crypto, diba? Para they're used for crypto.
Merong investor dito, nagfi-flex.
Yes. So ako, Ronald, agree ako. Yes, those would be my emojis also for Nvidia. Kasi, for me, talagang magagamit siya in the future. and again, in a lot of different growth sectors within the technology industry. So, yung caveat dito is mahal siya from a PE ratio standpoint. By some measures, it's 60 times. By some measures, it's
What?
160 times PE.
Oof.
So medyo mahal siya. Kasi sabihin natin the average PE ratio in the S&P 500, yung 500 biggest companies in the US. So yung medyo reasonable average PE is mga 15 to 20 times. Sabihin natin, parang ganon. So, mahal talaga siya. Pero, I like it because I think that it has the growth potential to eventually trade or to be priced at a more reasonable earnings multiple. And for me also, it's a classic example, if we're talking about the industry, of a picks and shovels industry. So, kwento ko lang, Salve, ha? So, it's a common approach kasi reference siya sa California gold rush in the US before. So, syempre maraming gustong mag-mine for gold. But actually, a lot of the people that got rich were not the ones who successfully mined for gold or tried to mine for gold. It
Yung
was the
nagbebenta
people that
ng
were
gamit.
nagbebenta ng gamit, the
Oo.
picks and shovels, to the gold mining industry. Kasi maraming tao na gustong mag-mine ng gold, right? So, for me, that's a bit the metaphor for something like the semiconductor chip industry because alam ba natin kung sinong mananalo sa AI, 'di ba? Sa data center, sa cloud computing, e-commerce, all of these things, crypto, gaming, hindi natin alam. Mahirap oftentimes nahulaan kung sino yung mananalo in these consumer-facing tech industries. But what
They
might
will
be a
all
little
use
bit
the chip.
easier, they will all
Yeah.
use the chips. And in
Galing.
terms of the number of chip makers in the world, hindi siya ganon karami, and maraming established na. And so, yung pagpipilian mo na kung sino yung mananalo, powering that industry that will be high growth, is a narrower set. So, mas may high chances of winning ka, so to speak. So that's why personally, I like these picks and shovels types of industries where siguro hindi siya as sexy as, siya yung Meta mismo, siya yung
Or
Instagram mismo,
Apple.
siya yung
Yeah.
TikTok mismo, or Apple mismo. But it's the more hidden infrastructure company na behind the scenes that are powering these kinds of companies and devices. So
Grabe.
that's one example for me of an attractive industry that I like. And then syempre pipiliin ko kung ano yung best in class doon, and also kung ano ba yung medyo malulunok yung price, di ba? Medyo reasonable yung price or malulunok natin na kasi naniniwala tayo dun sa growth trajectory of that company in terms of generating future profits. So that's
I'm learning.
one example. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm learning. Ewan ko sa inyo, pero ako marami ako natututunan. Parang nabubusog yung aking utak. Paki-show naman in the chat box if you are learning a lot so we can see where we want to go pa in this discussion. I know you have another example, pero I want to move on to one of the hottest topics here in Salveses. Fundamentals ba tayo? Technicals ba tayo? Is it both? How do you make them work? What is your personal style?
Sige. So this is just my personal style. I'm really much more of a fundamentals guy than I am a technicals guy. And honestly, part of it is that hindi lang ako masyadong educated and informed in terms of how to look at technicals in the right scientific way. And my training is really more around, strategy and finance and these things. So I look more at the fundamentals rather than the technicals. And I mean, my maybe slightly more, I guess, controversial, hindi man super controversial view. I think there's some others that share this. Is that mahirap talagang gawing proper investment strategy kung nag-rely ka lang mostly on technicals. Kasi sometimes talaga hindi mo mahuhulaan kung saan pupunta, pataas ba or pababa yung stock price in a short time period, right? So I'm much more of a fundamentals than a technicals guy. Having said that, hindi naman ibig sabihin na hindi na natin titingnan yung technicals at all. For me, tinitingnan ko yung technicals kapag gusto kong malaman kung kailan ko ba bibilin itong stock that I like, di ba? So it helps me answer the question of parang pababa ba yung price trend, pataas ba, saan yung support level, saan yung resistance level. I'm just using some terms for those that are technical enthusiasts, right? If you don't understand this, don't worry about it. But basically, it helps me time whenever I can buy something at a good price, right? So it helps me answer the question of when do I buy a stock. But what it does not help me answer is that whether I will actually buy the stock, yes or no. So for me, kapag yes or no question, fundamentals yung tinitingnan ko. And then, kapag nasagot ko na yung yes, it's just a matter of kung kailan ko ba siya bibilin. Now ba? Or in a few days, in a few weeks, in a few months. And titingnan ko yung mga sinasabi ng mga mas magagaling sa akin na technical commentators na nag-analyze talaga ng price trends. And then I will say, okay, mukhang nag-make sense naman yung sinasabi nitong technical analyst na to. Maybe I'll wait for another couple of weeks before I buy, when the stock that I like is at this price level. But again, decidido na ako na I will actually buy it unless the price goes crazy or the earnings end up becoming lower than expected. So for me, that's how I think about fundamentals versus technicals.
Okay. Sige, whatever you do, siguro wag lang Facebook analysis tsaka chismis analysis.
Tama
Ganun
yan,
lagi ko
tama yan.
nakikinig eh. Puro chismis lang pala. Okay, next question. Your biggest mistakes in investing in equities and how much did you make on your best investment? Very juicy.
Ay nako, biggest mistakes hanggang alas 12 ba tayo dito? Sige.
Wag.
Summarize ko na lang. Baka masyadong
Yes.
mahaba. Nako. So, ano ba? Nako, ang daming pagpipilian. Sige. I'll choose siguro 3. Pero una, for example, Zoom. My mistake there, I think, was greed. Kasi nung tinitingnan ko yung stock, parang pataas ng pataas and without any end in sight. Pero sa totoo lang, violate ko yung sarili kong analysis na, is this an industry that I like? Or is this a company, do I like this company within the industry? Kasi medyo questionable pala siya in retrospect. Hindsight is 2020, di ba? And those two things. Kasi when I look at yung mga video communications apps, diba, video conferencing, even back in the pandemic, medyo malinaw naman na there were really good free alternatives to Zoom. Diba? You have Google Meet, especially now. Maganda na yung Google Meet. There's Facebook Messenger Video. There's still other yung mga WebEx or yung mga older school names. But at the end of the day, it was a bit of a commodity. Commodity as in, medyo ako, as a user, as long as makausap ko kayo, medyo hindi na ako masyadong
Okay na.
particular whether gamitin ko Zoom or Google Meet or something else, right? Pero at the time kasi, sobrang ganda ng Zoom, ng user interface niya, the user experience. It was much better than things and stability, diba? Like the sound quality, the picture quality. Pero eventually, I think it became clear na malakas naman ang Google and malakas ang Facebook, and they have the technology to be good enough even if they don't meet the same quality as Zoom.
Libre
and
pa.
then syempre, libre pa. And then syempre, eventually natapos din ang pandemic. Well, sana tapos na nga according to the WHO. And so people started having more and more in-person interactions. And with that, usage of Zoom went down, and so did the earnings. And so talagang, and of course, like other macro factors in the global economy happened with the war and with inflation and interest rates and all of these things. I won't bore you to details with those details. Pero
Masakit sa
madami
bulsa?
nangyari. And then bumaba. Yes. I mean, masakit sa bulsa, pero parang masakit kasi I was up a lot and then I lost a lot of those gains. Gains pa rin naman siya, pero actually now it's trading below my initial price. So, yung takeaway ko doon is, look, again, hindsight is 2020, right? But if you have an industry view that you think makes sense, then I think wag ka masyadong masway dun sa momentum na, pataas ng pataas, tuloy-tuloy na 'to, to the moon, baby, 'di ba? Hindi gano'n, eh, unfortunately. So, medyo masakit din for me.
Lumiko.
That was one mistake. Oo, lumiko, napunta
But you
ng
have a very
Mars
interesting
instead of the moon.
pero experience din yung interesting din yung experience mo with Tesla. Iba naman.
Yes, iba namang ano 'to. This is more missed opportunity in terms of a mistake. I invested in Tesla quite early. Mababa talaga ang share price. Um, but then I sold after a few months na actually I think after a few weeks lang. Few months naman siguro na when I was already up 20%. Kasi I thought na alam mo I need to take this off the table, take these gains off the table. I don't want to be greedy, 'di ba?
Balik.
And parang yung valuation ng Tesla was at the time it was more than all of the car companies in the world combined,
Yeah.
'di ba? And
So,
so to
mahal na.
me, mahal. Parang is it really worth more than
All the
Benz
other
plus
car companies.
BMW plus Ferrari plus all of these car companies? And parang hindi ko mapaniwalaan na tama yung ganong pagpresyo dun sa Tesla stock. And so I thought, 20% gain out na ako. But what I failed to see, maybe, kasi syempre, hindi naman final ang assessment sa Tesla
Yeah.
stock and stocks in general, the story is never over. Um, it was really more, or people looked at it as more than just a car company and more than just an electric car company. They looked at it as really one of the world leaders in battery technology, in clean energy technology, because magaling talaga sila doon. And so there are the potential applications beyond just the electric vehicle market. Parang malaki talaga yung potential. And then of course, marami din
Which
mga
is
Elon
which
Musk
is
fanboys.
yeah, which is actually Anthony, same as your picks and shovels, no? The battery,
Yes.
hindi yung car mismo, but all the cars will be needing batteries.
Correct. So that's really the so-called investment thesis in Tesla, at least of a lot of of a lot of people. Now, in my defense, marami din mga short sellers, di ba? Na
Yeah.
they were betting against the against the stock of Tesla. Na talagang matatalino ng mga tao. I think like Michael Berry, the guy in yung movie na The Big Short, the one who really smart, made a lot of money
Yeah.
in the global
Hi,
financial
Josh.
crisis and the housing crisis. He was also short on Tesla and very bearish, di ba?
Uh-oh.
And so I thought I was in the company of, okay, marami naman mga matatalinong tao that also don't believe in this. So out na ako. But instead, I missed out on a potential 10x gain when that
Sakit!
stock. Yeah, so nung tinitingnan ko parang ayoko nang tingnan at a certain point kasi 'di ba, I missed the boat.
Yeah.
I mean, of course now medyo nagbumaba din siya, but I
Yes.
probably still would have gotten a 5x return or something like that, even if I just held on to it today pa. So that's the
Anthony,
second mistake.
right. So our viewers, umaakyat pa din ng umaakyat. There's Josh Santos. I just want to say hi. He's here listening. There
Hi,
are a lot
Josh.
of people listening, a lot of business owners. There's an economist. Marami from different countries, OFW, somebody from the UK, nandito. And I'm sure
Wow.
they have access to different markets na. No? Pero nakakatuwa lang as you talk about your own personal investments, you can make up to 5 times, you can make up to 10 times, 20 times. You can also lose. That's the nature.
Yes.
That's the nature of the beast, no? Lalo na if you don't use the proper tools. At talagang bumibili ka
Definitely.
lang dahil sinabi dun sa party, kausap mo yung
Mhm.
yung ex ng dati mong whatever. Tapos sinabi niya na, bumili ka nito dahil aakyat to, di ba? So so
Yes.
I guess what I'm trying to drive at is you win some, you lose some, but over time, kasi may question dito na I want to go there. Si Tina daw,
Mhm.
from Money University, somebody wants to ask, ano to, wise pa din ba in this time of uncertainty, does it still pay to invest in a defensive stock? Are utility and energy stocks gain gainers oftentimes. So quick round na lang tayo because it's 30 minutes already.
Ay, naku,
But I don't want
nag-overtime
to
na tayo.
miss
Sorry.
I don't want to miss the answers to these questions for our top fans in South Jose. So, okay pa ba ang defensive stock? What do you think of utility and energy?
Um, so they can be different, right? So I think energy, a lot of that is determined by supply and demand. A lot of that is determined by what's happening in the war in Ukraine. And so it's difficult to predict. What I would say though is that you always need to diversify your portfolio. And so if you own a lot of or if you're already thinking about buying tech stocks na
Mhm.
mahal, diba? Like we said, it's also important to balance that out in some way with more defensive stocks like utilities and energy. Kasi let's say na the world continues to go on a downward spiral na parang medyo mag-stretch out yung war in Ukraine and then yung inflation is a problem pa rin and then the Fed keeps on raising interest rates, bababa yung tech stocks mo pero at least you are saved a little bit by
The others.
the resilience of your defensive stocks, right? But then on the other side naman, if maganda na talaga yung ekonomiya and then everything is going up, then you'll be pretty happy with your tech stocks, but your defensive stocks won't drag you down too much. Of
Mhm.
course, it depends naman on your balance in the portfolio. So ako, personally, I always like to have some defensive stocks in the portfolio. Uh, Lalo na I am generally overweight on tech and growth.
Tech. Yeah.
So I want to make sure na if there are things that I do not foresee that happen in the world, hindi na sobrang bagsak yung portfolio ko. So that's my suggestion lang, but that's just my personal opinion. I hope that
Thank you.
helps.
Josh Santos sent 500 stars. Maraming salamat po. And the next question. So thank you for the question, SM Solomon. Oh, we have a comment from our economist friend. Great discussion, especially the share of experience by Anthony made the
Oh,
advice is
thank you
very
po.
practical and easy to follow. Thank you
Thank you,
daw sabi ni
Ranilo.
SM who asked the question. Okay,
Oh, thank you, SM.
the economist Ronilo Balbiran is a regular guest of On the Money, of ANC On the
Oh,
Money when he
nice.
still had studio guesting. Gabriel Ann said, okay, very quick na lang. Sorry guys, okay pa. Sabi nyo, extend. O, di mag-extend tayo if Anthony is still okay to extend. Ayaw
Sige
ka pa nilang
lang.
pakawalan. Okay?
Game lang.
Very insightful discussion daw kasi Gabriel Ann said, ano yung warning signs that an investment is about to be wasted and what to do? Hala, mahaba din to. And then her second
Oh,
question
man.
is, how much to set aside for investment ideally? How do you portion savings versus expenses versus investment? Oh my gosh.
Nako,
Okay,
ang hihirap ng mga tanong na yan. Sige, Salve, go
warning
ahead.
signs muna.
Warning signs. Nako, ang dami. Kasi it really depends on what type of company it is, what industry they operate in. But let's say for medyo obvious, pero for growth companies, if their growth is starting to slow, that is a warning sign. If their profit margins are not improving, that's definitely a warning sign. And in particular, example natin dyan is something like a Netflix, right? So actually, subscriber count din nila was challenged. I think for the first time, sometime last year, bumaba ang kanilang subscribers from
Yeah.
one period to another instead of actually growing. And so once the key metrics start changing direction and going the other way, that is definitely a warning sign for a particular company, right? So
Wala
again,
kasi
it really
silang Marvel
depends.
Universe eh.
Yeah,
Wala eh.
unfortunately, sana meron tayo nun, diba? So that's a warning sign. Another warning sign that is less about the numbers for me is if their customers start being really unhappy. Because for
Mm.
me, at the end of the day, um, the value of a company really ultimately depends on how much they delight their customer. I'm a big believer in customer centricity and customer delight. And so if you start seeing that there's like issues with the service or with the platform, there are a lot of unhappy customers. Hindi na sila net promoter na parang talagang excited na yung I love using Canva or I
Yeah.
love using this platform. Kapag the sentiment is, you know what, parang I don't like using this service anymore. I think I'm gonna,
Mm-mm.
I'm gonna switch. That could
Lipat
be a
na.
leading indicator that the company might not actually meet its growth and profitability targets. So for me, that's a way to keep ourselves honest. Na hindi lang yung the hard numbers are the things that we are looking at. We
Mhm.
should always be listening to what's actually going on with the customers of that particular company because everybody is here to serve, right? You're not gonna make money if you don't successfully serve your customers. So those are just a
Yung
couple of examples.
I think that's a great answer. I took note of that actually because it's very interest. It's very important as you rebalance, which is
Mhm.
maybe at least once a year, right? You have to rebalance or else baka
Yes,
habang tumatagal, mas lumalaki na pala yung portion na risky tapos conservative ka pala na investor. So those are some of the things that we need to think about. She has a very specific
right.
answer on paano mo hahatiin, magkano lalagay mo sa investment, expenses, savings. I think that this is very different for different people, right? And dependent also on the income that you're getting.
Yes.
Syempre, kung maliit lang income, talagang ganon. But for you, Anthony, how much do you, how, ilang percentage na ng ang
Sige,
nilalagay mo sa investment?
caveat lang, disclaimer, hindi ako personal finance guru. So, mas maraming mga tao na mas magaling sa akin in terms of providing advice on how to break down and how much to allocate. But what I would suggest is to first make sure na you have savings so that you have a buffer for things that you might need that you don't foresee before you start investing, right? Kasi
Your
sometimes,
emergency.
talagang excited na tayo na mag-invest and I think that comes from a good place because we really want to build our wealth and achieve our future financial goals. Pero dapat mauna yung kasi talagang there are things that we do not foresee with our families, with ourselves na you need that buffer, right? And you do not want to be in a situation where you invest something and then medyo hindi maganda yung stock market pero kailangan mo na yung pera, kailangan mong ilabas at a loss, right? So we do
Yeah.
not want that to happen. Now, um, there's no hard percentage that I'd give you now of like percentage of income because I think that that really depends from person to person. But you can set aside a small single digit, though double digit percentage maybe of your monthly income. The best thing is to really get started, no matter how small it is, right? Because there is the power of compounding, right? If you are able to consistently put away money and consistently invest in something in the stock market, if your investment horizon is super long, alam mo, the average annual return of the S&P 500 is something around 9% compounding per year. Long term, ha?
Mga ilang
Maganda na
taon
yan.
na
Mas,
yan?
yeah,
30
for a
years?
very long time. Oh, for decades. So, mas maganda yan kaysa, let's say, 4%, 5% that you'll get in a bank account. Although, of course, that's safer, right? But
Oh, you're talking about
in the
digital accounts.
yes,
Yes.
yes, that's true. Kasi kapag traditional, nako, 'di ba? Parang mga 2%.
Point zero.
Maganda na eh. Point zero, yung pa, yung pa. So you want to build that habit more. I think that's my guidance more than allocate a specific number as a percentage. And just make sure na your time horizon is long so that kahit up and down yan in the next few months or in the next couple of years even, um, overall in the long run the stock market, especially yung US stock market specifically, has
Mm-mm.
shown that it's always been on an uptrend. So of course it's not guaranteed, diba?
Mm-mm.
Parang there's always that disclaimer na past performance is not indicative of future returns. And there are some smart people that are saying maybe the next 10 years in the US stock market might actually be flat. So
Uh-uh.
warningan ko lang kayo, it might be flat. Ako natatakot
Oh,
ako sa ganyang news, but I'm a bit more of an optimist. So I think that there is still the opportunity to make money with employing some of these tools that we just talked about, looking at the industry, doing your work in terms of researching whether a company is best in class or a really great player in their
that can
industry,
beat the
um,
index. That can
and
you
price.
can do that.
Correct. And you
Yeah.
can beat the index. Correct. And so, and anyway, I think it's something that you should set aside money for. So, in terms of both the educational side of the action of putting away money for investments is already going to be enriching for you. And then hopefully the returns on the money itself follow with that.
Okay, I have four quick. Pinapagalitan na ako ni Direk. Bilisan na daw. Four quick questions. Ah, and ako tuloy yung nawala. Go for individual stocks or go for mutual funds? And then, hi, Director Sen! Hello! Grabe ang mga viewers natin today. Okay, go mutual funds versus stocks.
So if maliit pa lang and you're a beginner, and maliit pa lang yung sinaset aside mo, there is a case to be made to invest it in mutual funds and index funds. Kasi these funds are automatically diversified. Di ba pinag-usapan natin yan? Kahit may isang stock na sobrang exciting for you and that's the one thing that you want to invest in, hindi mo alam na baka bukas masagasaan ng bus. Pero sana hindi naman. Yung
Nako,
CEO
naman.
niyan, di ba?
Yeah.
It can happen and it has happened in the past. And in which case, medyo in danger ang ating investment. So that's called idiosyncratic risk. Naku, sana hindi masyado nakakatakot yung ano. But anyway, it just means that it's the risk na anything can happen with just one stock. And so if you're a beginner and you're only setting aside small amounts, if you already want to achieve diversification, even in your initial investments, index funds can be a good way to play the stock market, whether it's in the US index funds, something that's tied to the S&P 500 or maybe the Nasdaq, or kung dito sa Pilipinas, something that's tied to the PSEI. You can do that, right? But hopefully, as we are, and Warren Buffett says, diba, parang just put 90% of your investment money in index funds and watch it grow long term. Kalimutan mo siya. And then 10% siguro, you can play around with individual stocks. So,
Actually,
matalino
we look
si
for the
Manong Warren.
actual Vanguard Index Fund where he put his wife's investments.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
you should allocate some to that.
Yeah.
But I do think na as you become more familiar with investing and as you're able to put different amounts to work in different companies and you're able to achieve that diversification among a number of different stocks, then individual stocks becomes much more exciting, interesting, and it also forces you to be educated about that industry that you're investing in, about that particular company that you're interested in. And then long term, that knowledge, that investment in knowledge and that education will pay off for you. And you'll be able to much more quickly assess whether something is a good investment or not.
Pabilisan na magsalita to. Hi, Joel. He's asking a question. I think we answered some parts of this in the beginning of the show. I'll send to you the link,
Yes.
Joel. There's another question here that I'd like to highlight. ETFs and REITs. There you go.
So I'm
Mabilis
less familiar on REITs, so I'll pass on that question because I don't want to say something just for the sake of being able to answer your question. Baka mas familiar si Salvi on REITs. On ETFs, it really depends on what kind of ETF it is, right? Kasi ETFs typically have a particular theme. Diba? It's a basket of stocks. So some can be tied to the S&P 500, some can be tied to a specific set of tech stocks. Some can be tied to commodities and so on and so forth. Talagang endless yung ETFs. I think ETF sa Pilipinas, isa lang yata, di ba? And it's tied to the
FMETF.
PSEI.
The
Correct,
tracking error is
FMETF.
very small lang naman.
Yeah, it's actually pretty good. I actually have an allocation to FMETF. So all else being equal, okay naman siya. Kasi kapag nag-ETF ka sa Pilipinas, let's say, what are you really betting on? You're betting on the Philippine economy
Yeah.
or the companies that comprise the
The
conglomerates, diba, that
PSAI.
comprise
Yeah.
most of the Philippine economy. And if you believe na they will somewhat track our GDP growth, which is going to be around 6% ish, hopefully for the foreseeable future, if not higher, then if these companies do an okay job, then you should be achieving some level of growth that tracks that. So okay siya to start
Isang
off with.
oras pa daw, Anthony. Wag naman, gutom na si Anthony mamaya.
Ulitin natin,
Kakain.
Alex. O, di pa ako nag-dinner. Pero sige.
Ulitin natin. Would you like to talk about MP2 before I go to the other questions? Because there's a lot already in the comment section. But we will
Salve, ikaw
only
na
have
lang yung sa
Anthony.
MP2. Yeah. Ay, sorry,
Yeah.
go on, go on.
No, go ahead. Hanggang 9 lang daw maximum, sabi ni Direxy.
Sabi ni Direk.
Si
Sige,
Anthony.
game ako until 9. Sige.
Game daw until 9. Alright, so this is a very good question actually. How do you factor in from Leslie Santos? How do you factor in your decisions? The personalities behind the stock, Buffett's age, health, Musk's crazy diversion to Twitter.
Yeah, that's a great question, and you should definitely heavily factor that in. And so, what I would suggest is you look not only at the CEO, but their bench of C-level executives and senior executives that are running the company, right? Kasi as I mentioned a while ago, sana hindi naman mangyari, pero baka, di ba, habang tumatawid, may mangyari kay somebody, di ba? So,
Or Charlie Munger
that's
and
key,
Warren
man.
are getting
Yeah, they're
really, you know.
correct. Yeah.
I
So
mean, they still act
really
like
up
they're
there.
30-year-olds, but they
Yes,
do
that's
have
right.
a good bench, no?
They have a very
Ajit,
strong bench.
yeah, yeah,
Yes, correct. So,
yeah.
you should look at the rest of the senior leadership team that has a heavy hand in running that company. A lot of times they don't get all the press, right? We only hear about the CEO or the founders, but look at their leadership team. And in the case of something like a Berkshire Hathaway, they've been grooming successors to Buffett and Munger for a very long time. Diba? Like si Lilu is one of the superstars. He's outside now of Berkshire, but Munger gave most of like a lot of his money to Lilu to manage kasi si Lilu yung Chinese investor na is familiar with the Chinese market and has generated really good returns. And was with Berkshire for a very long time. But in any case, mga ganon yung titingnan mo. Sino ba yung next in line? Magaling ba sila? Have they been with the company for a long time? And have they been part of the growth story and the profitability story of this particular company? So in the case of Berkshire, I think talagang really good people are running that firm.
This is
In the
a company
case
that
naman
you have also in your portfolio, no?
I do, yes. Yes, it's part of my portfolio. Elon Musk, yeah, I mean, that's a little bit more, kasi ako, I'm not familiar with who's actually, parang who's in the bench of, running, Tesla and now Twitter, diba? They just replaced a lot of their senior leadership team. They're making these huge changes. So for me, medyo risky. I did consider, investing in Twitter, but parang I couldn't get comfortable with it because even though Elon Musk is obviously, arguably a genius and has created a lot of value, and he has these ideas for Twitter, medyo high risk, high return for me. And so until that clarifies a bit, baka I won't bet on that one just yet. So, pero importante yan. And I'm glad that you asked that question.
Si Joel said forced savings na yung MP2, but perhaps that's a good answer to somebody who sent we'll just get Anthony again. Guys, alam ko you want more.
Sure.
You want more, say more in the chat. Pero I think there's one question here from Sen. I don't know if you would like to answer this on the sovereign wealth funds. Napainom si Anthony ng kape.
Tubig.
Tubig.
Medyo, yung lalamunan na naging dry because of that question. Just kidding, just kidding. Um, okay, this is a politically charged topic, but I'll present two views on this. One is in the hands of capable, reliable investors. Sovereign wealth funds have a good function in terms of allocating the capital of the country. Diba? Pero also, my thought on sovereign wealth funds is usually meron munang sovereign wealth before magkakaroon ng
Good
sovereign
point.
wealth fund. Diba? Which means the sovereign wealth funds are typically associated with mga oil-rich countries, right? That's why you see them in
Because they have
Malaysia,
excess.
in the Middle East, correct? Because they have excess. Or like a rich city-state like a Singapore, diba? They have the
But we're in a
GIC, they
deficit,
have
Anthony.
Temasek. Yeah. So with us, I'm actually not as familiar with how much sovereign wealth we actually have to invest in the first place, and whether we have parang the right to take some risk with investing those funds, right? That's point number one. But point number two is the people behind it talaga is a really key consideration. Nakita na natin na we saw this go wrong next door neighbor, si Malaysia, di ba? They're an oil-rich country. They already had an existing sovereign wealth fund, yung Kazana. And then suddenly, si Najib Razak, di ba, said, oh, we want to do this one Malaysia Development Berhad, one MDB. By
Yeah.
now,
Gosh.
alam na natin na it was basically a vehicle for corruption. And so
Yeah.
it really depends on whose hands we place the sovereign wealth um, funds. So, hindi ako magja-judge, right? Kayo nang bahala mag-judge whether you trust
Yes.
the people that will be running that sovereign wealth fund, if that's something that we end up doing. So these are the considerations that I would have in mind.
Okay, great. Okay,
You're
guys,
welcome, Paul.
almost 9 p.m. I would like to ask lang Anthony, because
Sure.
obviously people love this episode because your answers were on the dot. It was very honest. And I
Thank
learned a
you.
lot. These kinds of things they can learn when they enroll in your classes in Excel. I just recently found out about Excel and attended some of the classes, and I super loved it. We won't talk about the backstory anymore. Baka gawin na lang natin yan pagbalik mo because almost
Sige,
9
sounds good.
p.m.
Game.
But can you talk about Excel? What can people learn from it? Is it hard? May exam ba? Pwede ka ba mag-fail? What can they expect?
Sure, sige, share ko lang. And parang it's not like a plug or anything talaga ha. I just wanted to share with you guys what I'm working on and what Salve has been a part of. And it's actually through Axel that we met. So we founded Axel late last year, me with the co-founder and a couple of other founding partners, because we want to bring world-class education, world-class business education to as many people as possible in an affordable and accessible way. So, as I had mentioned, or maybe as Salve mentioned, I spent some time in the US and Europe studying, working, and I've since come back to the Philippines, mga 11 years by now. And there are a lot of Pinoys din na bumalik na and feel like they have the passion to teach and to share their knowledge with people, especially on the business side of things. And we live in the age of entrepreneurship now, where there are so many people that want to gain business entrepreneurial skills. And we saw the opportunity to parang connect these people that are passionate about teaching with the people that are passionate about learning entrepreneurial skills that are basic in nature and talagang applicable if they want to start their own business, right? So that was really the beginning of Excel. And we've been fortunate enough that we've had many students sign up over we just started classes in January. We're completing actually this coming weekend our third cohort of about 20 students, and they've been very happy with their experience, and I feel very privileged that they appreciate what we're doing. And one of the things that we want to launch is actually something that's related to basic investing and personal finance. Because actually a lot of the entrepreneurs also have interest in that topic, and actually a lot of like you, Salve, financial literacy and investing in personal finance as part of your advocacy. And I've been able to meet so many people with that shared advocacy. Na it became very clear na alam mo, like we need to launch this course. We need to launch this course. So that's what we're planning to do for sometime in July. And we're in the process of building the curriculum and finalizing the dates and the venue for that. But I think what I wanted to share about it is we want to encourage people not just to learn about investing, but to learn it the right way, diba? So going back to the first points that we made at the beginning of this session, we want to look at the industry, how good a company is within that industry, the fundamentals, the numbers, PE ratios, enterprise value to EBITDA multiples, all of these things, right? And hopefully in a class setting, talagang mapapag-usapan natin siya in a much more meaningful way, but also in a practical and applicable way para may confidence ka na, you know what, I'm gonna open up my brokerage account and I'm gonna start investing in an index fund, in these couple of stocks. And then eventually, that'll get you going. So that 10 years down the line, talagang you already parang are really knowledgeable about investing, and hopefully you've reached your financial goals and you've built your wealth. So we're excited to do that. And again, we want to make sure that the discourse, that the topics that we talk about and the way that we talk about it is talagang supported by fundamentals and good, sound academic judgment. Pero at the same time, magagamit natin kagad sa investing. Diba? Kasi masyadong marami, I think, na
Na hindi
parang
kaya
based
sa
on the
20 minutes.
news. Oh, hindi na kaya sa 20 minutes. And also, mga investment decisions that are made without really considering the fundamentals that are so important, diba? And we want to make sure na part of our advocacy then is to make sure that people are making the right decisions and not losing their money to scams or
Scams.
to hype, these kinds of
Yes.
things. So for us, talagang partly advocacy driven na we want to make sure that we're bringing the knowledge to you so that you can make the best decision that you can for yourself in the field of investing and personal finance.
So guys, go to Axel. Ako na lang magpa-plug for you. You know, I'm a happy customer.
Thank you,
I
Salve.
am
Thank you
very,
very
very
much.
happy with the classes. I would love the other people who follow me on Salvices to really experience. So, because in Salvices, we do micro learning. It's a micro learning strategy because people don't have time. Right? So, every day, kahit alam kong hindi papatok to kasi boring, hindi naman si Papa Piolo talaga naglagay niyan, si Papa Anthony, ganyan. Pero we still put out content even though it's something that other people might find boring because it's our ambag to the world. But if you
Yes.
enroll in a course, this is the time where you will really go deep dive into it and learn from the experts. So, hindi ka, baka iba kasi marinig mo, magkamali ka, it's your money. It's your retirement. It's your pang-emergency
Yes.
fund na dapat kinip mo na lang. So, anyway, ang haba na ng sinabi ko. Bye, Sen! Aalis na daw si Sen. Sabi ni Ronald. But
Bye,
ito,
Sen.
cliffhanger because there are so many more questions. Long-term bonds ba daw? Lock in high interest compared to stocks, co-ops versus stocks, and this is the best part. And we'll end with this. We're not going to answer this because that means babalik si Anthony. Ano daw ba? Stocks versus crypto. And there we end the show today. We will have, I hope you can give us time for another round. Sana umabot
I'd be
ng
happy to.
20
I'd be
minutes.
honored.
Thank you very much for being here with us. Have a great dinner. Hello to Hannah. Guys, say bye to Anthony. If you love
Thank you,
the show,
everyone.
share
I
it.
hope that you
Okay.
learned through the session. Thank you, Salve, for having me. It's a pleasure.
Thank
And
you.
good night to
Bye,
everybody.
everyone. Good
Bye.
night.